Any true fan of horror has most likely watched A Nightmare on Elm Street, which is one of the most iconic slasher movies of all time. But what if I told you that there really was a real-life incident that involved the deaths of people within their own nightmares? Wes Craven drew his inspiration for this film from several articles that reported on these bizarre deaths in the Los Angeles Times during the 1980s. You best have your hot coffee at the ready to keep you awake, because shit is about to get real. This is the astonishing true story of the real Nightmare on Elm Street. Freddy Krueger's real-life victims weren't white middle-class teens, as played by Heather Langenkamp and Johnny Depp. They didn't talk in mall slang, excessively blow-dry their hair, or dress in early 80s style pastels. They were mostly male refugees who had fled their homeland to escape a nearly genocidal conflict. They were from a nomadic tribe from the mountains of Southeast Asia. Originally from southern China, they fled what had been their homeland for thousands of years in the mid-19th century, when the Manchu dynasty labelled them as barbarians. They escaped to neighbouring countries like Vietnam and Laos. Their tribe is known as the Hmong. Their struggle continued first under French colonial rule, before settling down for decades of Laotian royal power. When the Vietnam War spread to Laos and Cambodia, the American-supported Royal Lao government recruited them to fight the communist Pathet Lao troops. The Hmong gained a reputation as fierce fighters, but the war devastated their people. An estimated 1/3 of their population in Laos was wiped out in the conflict. Following the 1975 communist takeover, about 100,000 Hmong fled Laos to seek asylum in Thailand. Of those who remained in Laos, thousands were detained in what were called re-education camps. Away from their home, the Hmong struggled to adapt. They were mountain farmers and warriors with a unique religion centered on animals and spirits. They farmed by growing opium and cleared the fields by using fire. Their written language only came into existence in the 20th century. Many couldn't read it anyway. Then they came to America and, strangely, began dying in their sleep. By the summer of 1981, the LA Times reported that 20 Hmong men living in America died under the same circumstances. All were young and showed no signs of ill health until death took them in their sleep. Their families said that most didn't smoke or drink. Some witnesses said that they heard troubled breathing and groans right before their deaths. The deaths prompted an inquiry by the Federal Center for Disease Control. They tried to contain the unexplained horror of the sleep death by creating the term Sudden Unexpected Nocturnal Death Syndrome, or SUNS. Officials suspected cardiac failure, but were otherwise baffled. Many blamed the stress of culture shock for refugees moving to the US. A Minnesota medical examiner by the name of Dr. Michael McGee told the New York Times that he thought Hmong victims may have been frightened to death. Hang Pao, a former Laotian general and a political leader for the Hmong, publicly attributed the deaths to wartime gassing attacks. He went on to say that the nighttime seizures were delayed reactions to the chemical toxins that the Pathet Lao used to poison villages. While the sudden sleep death hit the American Hmong refugees the hardest, the mystery illness wasn't limited to their people alone. The sleeping death was striking Asian men across the globe. The disease had a long history in Asia, even in countries with no Hmong population. In 1983, the Associated Press reported that Japanese and Filipinos were dying from similar unexplained deaths. Researchers estimated that between 500 and 1,000 Japanese men described in their 20s and 30s and as healthy died in their sleep of the condition known in Japan as pokori. Recently uncovered research indicated that it wasn't new. CDC official Roy Barron and forensic pathologist Robert Kershaw published a report saying that the attacks predated the Hmong arrival in America. As researchers dug into the culture with histories of sons, they found something surprising. Freddy Krueger wasn't the only killer stalking his victims through their dreams. According to Asian folklore, monsters had been preying on sleepers for years. Hmong traditional beliefs revolve around nature, spirits, and ancestor worship. Among the most feared spirits is a nightmare monster. When Hmong fail to perform religious rituals properly, their ancestor and village spirits stop guarding them, leaving them vulnerable to the crushing attack that the nightmare monster uses to press the life out of its victims during their sleep. Wes Craven has told the story behind Elm Street several times. It's a great story. He says he came across 3 small articles in the Los Angeles Times about immigrant men from Southeast Asia, specified sometimes as Cambodians, who died in the middle of their nightmares. Craven says the reporters didn't see a pattern, but he made the connection himself. As Craven tells it, the third victim's story is the most vivid and has the clearest line to the nightmare mythos. A 21-year-old son of a doctor kept himself awake for days out of fear of something attacking him in his nightmares. His family gave him sleeping pills and implored him to rest. After about a week, he finally fell asleep watching television. In the middle of the night, the family wakes to screams and crashing. They run into his room, only to find the man dead. An autopsy reveals no cause of death, but the family finds a hidden coffee maker and discarded sleeping pills. You can see why this part of the report caught the attention of a film director like Wes Craven. So, do you believe that the deaths of these men were caused by what we now know as sudden adult death syndrome? Given that this is such a rare condition, it seems unlikely that it would happen to all of those within the group. Therefore, does it leave us with the possibility that a so-called nightmare monster really did kill them in their sleep? I'll leave that up to you to decide. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're new to my channel and you like strange but true stories like this, you should definitely subscribe for weekly content. Thanks for watching.